It's actually kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. We have billions, literally billions of dollars of digital value floating around out there, being completely secured without a single central boss in charge. No CEO, no bank vault, just code. Today, in this explainer, we're diving into consensus mechanisms, the heavyweight showdown. We're going to look at exactly how blockchains secure themselves, how they agree on what's actually true, and how they manage these massive economic networks purely through computer science and game theory. And really, it all starts with one fundamental question.
Right, so imagine the sheer difficulty of achieving decentralized consensus in a completely trustless environment. If we're dealing with digital money, we face a massive glaring problem. Normally, you have a central authority, like a bank, sitting in the middle to deduct funds from my account and safely add them to yours. But without that bank, what's to stop someone theoretically from just manipulating the network state and spending that exact same digital asset over and over again?
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll cover the double spending problem, proof-of-work mechanics, mining pool payout strategies, proof-of-stake explained, slashing and economic finality, and we'll wrap up by comparing consensus protocols.
Section 1. The double spending problem, the need for consensus.
So this is the foundational challenge that every single decentralized network absolutely must overcome if it wants to function reliably. Double spending is essentially the super complex challenge of timestamping and truth verification across a completely distributed network. Think of it as the digital equivalent of trying to hand someone a physical dollar bill, but somehow duplicating it to spend it in two different places at the exact same time. Obviously, you can't have that. To prevent it, decentralized networks use what we call a consensus mechanism. This is an automated protocol, a really strict set of rules that allows totally independent nodes all around the world to securely synchronize a shared ledger. They all agree on the network state, which makes double spending mathematically impossible.
Section 2. Proof-of-work mechanics, competing for the block.
Now, this was the original, completely groundbreaking solution that launched the Bitcoin back in 2009. Proof of work is this entirely new kind of system, and it is built on raw, relentless computational competition. To update the ledger, computers on the network, which we call miners, have to compete to solve a complex mathematical puzzle. But the really key thing to understand here is that finding the valid hash isn't about applying some highly complex, nuanced logic. As our source material brilliantly describes it, it's actually like a random locker combination with 1 million numbers. It is pure, brute force guessing. These miners are just rapidly, blindly cycling through random combinations, hoping to be the very first one to unlock the right combination to process the next block of transactions.
And guys, the sheer scale of this guessing game is staggering. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, the total hash power of Bitcoin miners is roughly 125 exahashes per second. That means the network is cycling through 125 quintillion possible solutions every single second. Yeah, quintillion with a Q. Doing that requires massive amounts of specialized computer hardware and, of course, a staggering amount of physical electricity to power it all. It is literally a monumental industrial-scale competition.
And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most elegant features of proof of work, the difficulty adjustment. Because remember, the network has no central boss, so it acts as its own self-regulating cruise control. Approximately every 2 weeks, or if we want to be exact, every 2016 blocks, the protocol evaluates the total computational power on the network. If more miners join the party and the hash rate increases, the puzzle difficulty automatically adjusts up. If miners leave and the power drops, the difficulty adjusts down.
So why does it do this? Well, to fiercely protect a 10-minute block time. This elegant difficulty adjustment ensures that no matter how much computational power floods into or completely exits the network, the average time it takes to mine a block and process those transactions remains securely anchored around a very predictable 10-minute target. It's brilliant because it ensures the whole economic model remains completely stable over time.
Section 3. Mining pool payout strategies, the business of POW.
Now, because this competition is so fiercely intense today, a solo hobbyist miner running a rig in their garage has almost zero chance of guessing that random combination first. So what do? Individual miners pool their computational resources together. They team up to earn more consistent payouts in this highly competitive landscape. But when a miner joins one of these pools, they face a classic risk versus reward calculation on exactly how they want to get paid. As the text notes, PPS, or pay per share, is like a steady job with a fixed salary. PPLNS, pay per last N shares, is more like working on commission. Let's break down what that actually means for a miner's bottom line.
What's really fascinating here is how systematically these different methods shift the financial risk between the individual miner and the pool operator. So with PPS, you get a highly stable, fixed payout for your work, but you completely miss out on transaction fees and any lucky streaks the pool might have. The pool is taking on all the risks, so naturally they charge higher fees. PPLNS, on the other hand, is highly variable. Your payout depends heavily on the pool's actual luck in finding a block. So you take on the risk, but your fees are lower. And then you have these hybrid models like PPS Plus and FPPS, which try to offer maximum stability while also estimating and paying out a share of those super lucrative transaction fees. It is a direct, calculated business decision for every single participant.
Section 4, Proof of Stake Explained, Locking Capital.
Okay, so as blockchains evolved, developers started looking for a way to replace all that physical electricity with locked capital. And this builds a completely different life cycle for a network validator compared to a miner. First, instead of buying hardware, you lock up the network's native cryptocurrency as collateral. This is your stake. Second, the protocol randomly selects you, almost like drawing a ticket in a lottery, to either propose a new block or vote on someone else's block. Third, if you perform your duties honestly, you earn rewards. But if you go offline or try to act maliciously, you face penalties. So it effectively swaps out that brute force hardware competition for a randomized capital-based assignment of duties. But joining this system isn't always cheap. To become a direct solo validator on Ethereum, for instance, you are required to lock up 32 ETH. That is some serious skin in the game. While anyone can participate in theory, this really high capital requirement introduces its own barrier to entry. And critics are quick to point out that this could lead to potential centralization risks, basically favoring people who already hold a large amount of wealth.
Section 5, Slashing and Economic Finality, Securing the Stake.
So here's the obvious question. If producing a block in proof of stake costs virtually no physical energy, how do you prevent bad actors from just spamming the network or completely rewriting history, right? How do you keep people honest when the actual cost of taking an action is practically zero? Because stake is a much cheaper resource to wield than electricity, proof of stake introduces some entirely unique vulnerabilities. You have the nothing at stake problem, where a validator could just lazily vote on multiple competing chain histories because, well, it costs them nothing to do it. You also face long-range attacks, where old validators might try to forge alternate histories. These are seriously complex problems that require a massive built-in deterrent.
So the crucial point is that the ultimate deterrent to these attacks is a mechanism called slashing. If a validator breaks core safety rules, say like trying to vote for 2 different blocks at the exact same time, the network protocol actually steps in and permanently destroys a portion or sometimes all of their locked capital. This mechanism creates what we call explicit economic finality. It makes attacking the network catastrophically expensive, not in terms of electricity you had to burn, but in real hard money that gets instantly vaporized.
Section 6, Comparing Consensus Protocols, the final way in.
All right, now that we understand the inner workings of both of these heavyweights, we are going to bring both systems head-to-head for a neutral, side-by-side comparison of their fundamental design choices. The foundational difference here is exactly how they source their security. Proof of work relies heavily on unrecoverable real-world resources. It essentially rents security from the physical world by forcing miners to continually burn electricity and depreciate massive amounts of hardware. Proof of stake, on the other hand, entirely internalizes those costs. It escrows security right inside the protocol by holding locked capital hostage, which, as a result, vastly lowers the environmental impact and energy consumption.
And you know, this design choice heavily impacts processing speeds as well. Because proof of stake entirely removes those complex, time-consuming mathematical puzzles, it allows for much faster transaction settlement. You can see the stark contrast here. Bitcoin's proof of work anchors block times at about 10 minutes, whereas Ethereum's proof of stake network can process new blocks in roughly 12 seconds.
Finally, let's look at the absolute worst-case scenario. How would an attacker actually go about compromising each network in a dreaded 51% attack? In proof of work, an attacker would have to somehow acquire and power enough physical hardware to control the majority of the global hash power. That is a massive, almost impossible logistical and energetic hurdle. In proof of stake, an attacker must purchase and lock up the majority of the staked collateral. That is a massive financial hurdle. Both of them require immense, almost unimaginable resources to actually execute. They're just deployed in completely different forms.
Which leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question to ponder. As these decentralized systems continue to scale and potentially become the backbone of the global financial system, Will we ultimately favor the unforgeable real-world anchor of physical energy? Or will we lean more toward the environmental efficiency and rapid agility of locked capital? Both systems are absolute masterclasses in economic game theory. It's a massive technological shift we are witnessing, and watching how these foundational systems evolve from here is going to be absolutely fascinating.